Welcome to our third in a series of 5 Rehabilitation Services Administration Technical Assistance Programs on prior approval. My name is Terry Martin, Technical Assistance Specialist in the Rehabilitation Services Administration State Monitoring and Improvement Division's Technical Assistance Unit. The presenters for our program are David Steele, Chief of RSA State Monitoring and Improvement Division's Fiscal Unit, and Julia Doyle, Fiscal Unit Financial Management Specialist. This technical assistance program will provide information related to prior approval requirements as they pertain to administrative and clerical costs. David?
Thanks, Terry. This webinar is applicable to all of the Rehabilitation Services Administration's Formula Grant Awards. And as Terry mentioned, the presentation covers prior approval to directly charge administrative and clerical staff salaries. The uniform guidance requires the salaries of administrative and clerical staff normally be treated as indirect costs. Direct charging of these costs may be appropriate only if the following conditions are met. First, that the administrative or clerical services are integral to a project or activity. Second, that the individuals involved can be specifically identified with the project or activity. Third, that such costs are explicitly incurred in the budget, in the budget, or have a prior written approval from the federal awarding agency. Because RSA's Formula Grant Awards do not require budgets for approval, submission of budgets for approval, then charging of these costs require the prior written approval from the federal awarding agency. And then the fourth condition is that the costs are not also recovered as indirect costs. The salaries of administrative and clerical staff should normally be treated as indirect costs because at the core, most administrative support staff indirectly support all the grant award activities as well as activities of other programs and services which may not be allowable costs to the grant award, which is why the uniform guidance placed an emphasis on those costs being treated as indirect costs. Administrative and clerical salaries are salaries for supporting services that generally benefit the department or agency activities or objectives, including functions such as clerical support, financial management, procurement of materials and services, budget and planning, and personnel management. Clarification in the uniform guidance highlights that the salary for an administrative assistant should generally, as we said, be charged through an indirect cost. And that in order for the services to be specifically charged to the award, it must be identified with the project or activity, meaning the work is assignable in accordance with the relative benefits received, which is referred to allocability. The onus has been and remains with the grantee to allocate a specific portion of an administrator or clerical staff's time to a given program by reasonable methods and support the charges accordingly. Direct charge administrative or clerical services must be integral to the project or activity as opposed to necessary to the overall operation of the agency and assignable in part to the programs. For example, that's listed in the uniform guidance is an administrative assistant completing financial reconciliations should not be divided and charged directly to all awards under a department. Although the financial reconciliations are necessary to overall execution of the grant, this is true of all activities that are provided through the department. And therefore, these types of services would not be considered integral to the project's goals and objectives. Integral is generally interpreted to mean that the administrative and clerical services are essential and vital to the achievement of the stated aims and objectives of the grant. It's important to remember that in looking at the treatment of costs, that the uniform guidance requires that charges be treated consistently. Administrative and clerical support cannot be incorporated into a facility's administrative rate, which is part of their indirect cost charges, and then also recovered as a direct cost. Agency internal controls should ensure consistent treatment of the costs. To prevent the charging of unallowable costs of the grant award, you need to ensure that staff positions requiring prior approval are identified, that prior approval to direct charge the salaries is obtained, and that the salary expenditures are monitored to ensure that the prior approval authority amount isn't exceeded.
David, maybe it'd be helpful to talk a few minutes about submitting a prior approval request.
Thanks, Terry. RSA has developed a template prior approval spreadsheet that grantees may use when submitting requests to direct charge administrative and clerical staff salaries. Using the spreadsheet will assist in the timely processing of prior approval requests. For a copy of it, you can contact your RSA financial management specialist assigned to your agency. We also hope to have it posted with this webinar for download as well. Requests for prior approval of administrative and clerical staff charges should be submitted to the agencies assigned to RSA financial management specialist at least 60 days before the start of the new federal fiscal year. This will provide RSA sufficient time to respond to requests and follow up with the agency in the event there are any questions. And again, this referred to the federal fiscal year. So because prior approval requests are tied to a specific grant award, what we're asking is that states 60 days prior to the start of a new grant award, and the grant awards begin on October 1st, is when the grant award period begins. So 60 days prior to October 1st, we would like grantees to submit these to RSA for approval. This will give us time to review them, and if we have any questions or need additional information to be provided, we can get back with the agency so that by the time the grant awards are issued for the next federal fiscal year, the agencies will be in good shape as far as the direct charging of administrative or clerical staff. When requesting prior approval, please include only direct costs for allowable administrative and clerical staff pursuant to the uniform guidance, and don't include personally identifiable information in your request. I know that may seem somewhat common sense to a lot of people, but because our email address is in ed.gov doesn't mean that information transmitted by email is secure. It goes through many different servers before it arrives to the Department of Education through a variety of ways. So it's important that in submitting this, we don't want you to submit names of individuals, again, or other identifying information, social security numbers, so that we don't have to worry about in any way conflicts with regard to how we manage that information and transmission of it in an insecure manner. The following information must be included in the spreadsheet, or if you're submitting a request that's not using the spreadsheet format. The grantee name and state, the grant name, and the federal fiscal year for which the request is being made. In this instance, we did not put the grant award number because we recognize that it's for a future award, so we're asking you to put the name of the grant and the federal fiscal year for which it applies. And please don't submit submit for future years outside the one that's coming up that's current. We've had grantees ask if they could submit like 17, 18, and 19 at the same time, and no, we'll be approving those as we move forward. So submitting those at the same time wouldn't work. We would only approve the one for the upcoming federal fiscal year. And again, as we stated in prior approval in some of the other prior sessions, we can't go back and give retroactive approval for direct charging of staff. So we're looking again at the requests for future requests. Also include contact information in case of questions regarding submission, the position title for the individuals that you're wanting to direct charge the award, a brief position description, just a couple of sentences. We're certainly not asking you to include all of their PDs or position descriptions. That's not something we'll have an opportunity to go through, but just a couple of sentences that describe the positions, the number of positions, the direct salary amount to be charged to the award. If you have multiple positions, give us the average of the cost of those positions. We're not asking you to list each one separately, but give us the average of the costs. The percent of time working on the award, again, this should be 100 to charge the cost of the award. And it'll give us an opportunity. This is another important thing about prior approval. It will give us an opportunity to look at the positions that are being directly charged the award and determine, and ensure that those that may be working on more than one program are being charged and cost allocated accordingly. The total amount of administrative and clerical staff direct salary charges being requested. So at the bottom, a total for which you're requesting prior approval to charge direct administrative and clerical staff.
What are some things we should consider, David?
Some considerations. Please, again, do not include positions that are charged to an approved indirect cost rate or cost allocation plan. If that's been approved, then the cost allocation methodologies for those has been established and approved by the cognizant federal agency. Also, take into consideration that before you submit it, you need to review the positions to ensure they meet the uniform guidance requirements to charge the cost directly. If the positions don't meet the requirements, again, those charges must be charged to an approved indirect cost rate or cost allocation plan. And if you're working on any other programs or grant activities that don't benefit the award, the salary costs may not be charged directly to the award. There's no minimum threshold under which staff can work on an unallowable program and our activities charged and have their activities charged entirely to a different award. So for those staff you have working on multiple programs that are funded differently or from different projects, it's important to ensure that those costs are allocated appropriately. All right, that's it, Terry.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Julia. We invite you to send questions that you may have regarding the general content of this technical assistance program or other questions you may have related to the other parts of this series to rsafiscal@ed.gov. If you have a question particular to your agency, specific to your situation, we would invite you to send those directly to your fiscal unit liaison. And thank you very much. We invite you to review the upcoming 4th and 5th program in this technical assistance program series on prior approval. And thank you very much for joining us for this program.